My name's Michael Allen. It's my privilege to teach students about theology, not only studying the Bible, but learning to read the Bible for the sake of ministry in the communion of the saints. Learning how our reading of the Bible and our consideration of our Christian calling today and its various facets can be strengthened and resourced by learning from those men and women who've gone before us, who have served in our own or other traditions, and who might lead us back and shed light on what God has actually said to his people through the inspired witness of his prophets and apostles. One of those people who has proven through the years to be so central to my own formation and has proven to be such a blessing and a resource to my students in various settings is John Calvin, the great 16th century reformer, and the influential pastor-teacher early in the Reformed tradition. Calvin's writings are voluminous and well-known even a half a millennium after his lifetime. He's much debated and to this day still controversial. And I find that oftentimes people's assumptions and approaches to Calvin are marred or misshapen by a number of presuppositions or assumptions. These can be commended both by his critics, who read him falsely or as if he were concerned primarily about things that are rather marginal or secondary to him, but they can often be put forward even by people who would advocate Calvin as a way forward and would suggest that they're Calvinists or supporters. They too oftentimes are commending something that may well be a value in principle, a belief or practice of Calvin, but may not be the main thing. It's crucial to actually consider Calvin as a man in his own times, a man shaped not only by the Bible, but by the Christian tradition and its varied forms, a man who learned from Augustine and Bernard of Clairvaux and Martin Luther and Martin Bucer, others in his own day and age, a man involved in various controversies regarding the Protestant Reformations, a man with certain pastoral callings and literary outputs, a man who felt impelled to, for various reasons, instruct Christians in their faith in a number of ways. We do well to listen to all these situational or contextual realities so that we can assess John Calvin for who he really was. We can engage him in the situation and the context in which he actually lived. We can better know what he's commending, what he's disagreeing with, and how he's making those claims in his own day and age. But secondly, we do well to think through Calvin's theology and the way that he actually structures it. We want to pay attention to all the varied ways in which he commended the truths of the Christian faith, looking at his commentaries and sermons, his tracts and treatises and letters, as well as his systematic theology textbook. But we do want to observe that it's in his Institutes of the Christian Religion that he offers a broad schematic or structured approach to the Christian faith. And so in this course, we can use the structure of the Institutes as a way in which we can learn from all his many writings. We'll go at times to varied commentaries or treatises, but we'll see how they connect to the broad vision in which Calvin imagines the gospel and the God revealed therein, and the way in which Calvin draws out the implications for our own character and calling as we come to know God. So in this course, we want to consider the man in his times, the situations and settings within which Calvin lives and ministers and writes. And then we want to consider the way in which his theology is laid out, the structure, the scope, the sequence, the emphases and priorities, the modes of argument, and the resources that he brings to bear in various situations, as well as the varied claims and beliefs that he espouses. I hope that by the end of the course, you'll appreciate that Calvin was an exegetical or biblical theologian, but that in no means was played off against commitment to the consensus of the church, the tradition of the faith, the rules of faith and love that he had learned from those who'd gone before him. I hope that you'll see that Calvin is a man who does commend the importance of things like election or predestination, but that in no way somehow defines the center of his theology or rules out an equal and at times even overwhelming concern to describe the varied nature of redemptive history, the humanity of Christ, the experience of the Christian. I hope that you'll see that Calvin is remarkably resolved and rather brilliant in his exposition of Protestant principles like sola scriptura or justification by faith alone, and yet at the same time he's deeply Catholic. While he argues against Roman forms of Catholicism, he nonetheless remains committed to the Church as the mother of all Christians and the communion of the saints. And he argues in varied ways for the significance of the Catholic faith and Catholic practices of preaching and sacramental practice in the Church. We see in so many ways that Calvin bursts the expectations we might bring to him, and that in each of these cases, whether we agree with him or not at the end of the day, we find we're brought to bear in discussion of biblical texts, in engagement of historical controversies, and in the interconnections of different themes and topics across the span of Christian doctrine. Finally, what we see in Calvin's theology is the merger of what we might call the poetic and the analytic. He has a way with words, even as he has a history as a lawyer. He is a remarkable systematizer, and he thinks synthetically in a way that exceeds figures like Luther. And yet he's actually far more poetic and beautiful in his exposition. He has a way with what he calls lucid brevity, getting to the point and illustrating his arguments, not only in his sermons, but even as institutes and commentaries. Hopefully we'll see that as a pastor, as a writer, as one who serves as a spiritual director of the saints, he has a concern not only for truth, but also for rhetorical power leading unto the encouragement of piety. We'll see these and so many other things as we journey in our study of John Calvin.